Hi friends, welcome back to my channel Value Infinity. Friends, there is one key mineral which is responsible for all those unwanted side effects and unwanted effects of diabetes on your body. Do you want to know which mineral is that? And supplementation with it can really change the whole scenario of your blood fluctuation. Stay tuned till the end to know which mineral. Friends, before I begin this video, I would highly recommend you to watch my previous video. I'll put a link here and also in the description where I have discussed how I could reverse my diabetes through natural methods and completely healed it naturally actually. And today I don't have any symptoms or any problems relating to sugar fluctuation, because this is a continuation of that video where here I'll be talking about what are the scientific backings to whichever points which I have discussed in my previous video. You may have a question that how I could arrive at a very specific reversal plan which I could design and I adhere to and get my condition reversed. What I personally did is, like, I went through all the research papers and all the available data about diabetes and blood sugar fluctuation, and these three major points came up in most of the researches and most of the papers which I specifically studied, and then I tried to correlate it with my conditions which I was experiencing, and I could arrive at a final conclusion that I should follow these specific steps to overcome my condition. I did follow it. I came across hurdles. I then went back, did a research again, and then corrected all those hurdles or maybe mistakes or failures, and then I arrived at this foolproof plan which I had presented in my previous video. So it does have a strong clinical and research-based backing for whatever I have discussed in my previous video. Let me put forward all those clinical literatures, research papers, or maybe derived conclusions out of some meta-analysis or all those hypotheses, which proves my point. I would just address three major areas which I had discussed in my previous video. The first one is excessive colonization of Candida albicans. There are clinical literatures which prove that excessive overload of Candida albicans is noticed, especially in patients with type 2 diabetes, or it has a multiple correlation, like people who have excessive Candida population, they end up having diabetes, and at the same time diabetic patients who are diagnosed diabetics have higher levels of populated Candida albicans or maybe other sugar loving bacteria. The second point which proves my hypothesis is like the reduction in stomach acids or achlorhydria, that is absence of complete hydrochloric acid inside your gut. There are literatures, if not directly proving it, but it does prove that low stomach acid levels has a correlation with ending up in diabetes, because it could have multiple attachments to it, but it does have a role to play. It could be like poor digestion of protein as one aspect. It could have poor breakdown of minerals like calcium, potassium, magnesium, and other minerals, or acidification of stomach, which in turn eliminates all the unwanted bacteria. But in any case, it does have a role to play in diabetes management. The third point which I would like to prove, which I had discussed in my previous video, is lack of minerals, especially potassium. So there are clinical literatures which prove that there is a direct correlation between lack of potassium leading to diabetes, or diabetic patients having lower levels of potassium. So I would put across all those literatures on the screen for you to go through, as well in the description, so that those skeptics or those people who the nerds who want to know more about the clinical part of it could go through all of them. If you look into most of the clinical trials or maybe research papers, as you can see, that it all suggests a cyclic loop of involvement of Candida leading to uncontrolled diabetes, or high uncontrolled hyperglycemic type 2 diabetic patients having an overload population of Candida. It's cyclic actually and works both way around. So this connection is clearly proved in most of the clinical trials and researches. Yet there is no treatment regimen which predominantly tackles that Candida overgrowth. And one reason could be like most of the antifungals which are available has a very broad spectrum, but most of them don't cover Candida albicans specifically. So that could be one reason. But other than that, I don't find a reason that most of the doctors don't. They may treat symptomatically bacterial or fungal overgrowth. So Candida albicans is the most common yeast which is found in the human gut, thrives on glucose, and when it is overpopulated inside the gut, it starts to outcompete the beneficial gut bacteria for sugar. And even in some labs, it was found that Candida albicans can alter the environment of the gut, and producing certain metabolites which can make the gut more permeable. It's all proved through some studies or the other. And Candida outgrowth also produces aldehydes, which causes nervous system to getting affected. And it also influences the gut-brain signaling, which makes you more prone towards sugary foods. Repeated fluctuations of blood sugar levels leads to a fluctuation of insulin, and then that puts your body into a lot of stress. And Candida overgrowth also puts your body in a low-grade inflammation and leading to an increased permeability of the gut called leaky gut. So these are scientific evidences which prove that there is a correlation between Candida overgrowth and your uncontrolled diabetes, which I could capture. And then I didn't go for eliminating Candida straight away, but I designed a different pathway altogether to heal my problem. Now let's discuss lowering of the stomach acid levels. So as you can see, there are multiple clinical trials which clearly indicates that consumption of proton pump inhibitors or maybe the acid blockers results in 24% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. But it definitely has a role to play, and this is one aspect yet again none of the medical practitioners try to address. Like, this is one of the key factors which affects your overall digestion, your overall glucose metabolism, your overall dysbiosis, your overall breakdown of all those key minerals or nutrients from the food. Even the digestion of protein is significantly impaired because of lowered levels of acids. Let's look into the clinical trials and papers which are related to mineral absorption and mineral breakdown, or maybe the direct involvement of potassium with diabetes. Yet again, this is also cyclic and is in a loop. Like researchers found that potassium is directly involved in insulin secretion, and low potassium creates lower secretion of insulin. So it's a cyclic kind of a loop, and is both correlated. So this also could clearly give you an indication that there are research papers which are available on the internet, but it has so much of information overload, or maybe it is so much complicated in terms of their language and in terms of their the methods and trials. It becomes very difficult for us to really identify what is the key message which has been communicated with that specific trial. But let's just break it down. Like, if you see there are so many literatures and so many published articles which straight away talks about lower levels of minerals leading to uncontrolled diabetes. The most important mineral which directly impacts the insulin secretion is potassium. Now let's see how potassium plays a major role in glucose metabolism and also insulin sensitivity. And let's see what is the correlation and connection. Actually, insulin secretion from the pancreatic beta cells depends on potassium channels functioning properly. So low levels of potassium, that is hypokalemia, can impair the release of insulin. Low potassium can also reduce cellular glucose uptake, leading to a higher blood sugar levels. Let's look into why potassium in specific is one of the key minerals. Of course, there are other minerals like magnesium, calcium, and other minerals too, but potassium in specific is because it's a kind of notorious. So actually the blood very tightly regulates potassium, the blood serum potassium levels, which is between 3.5 to 5 millimoles per liter. And even a slightest balance, off balance from 3.5 on a lower side and 5 on a higher side could cause really life-threatening and heart and nervous issues. When you go for a blood serum potassium level check, most of the time it will always show you normal, even in a diabetic patients, and that could be one of the major reasons that it's very difficult for the doctors to pinpoint potassium as one of the deficiencies. But if you see the clinical trials, it clearly indicates there is lower levels of potassium in the muscles and in the cells. So as we discussed, that potassium is one of the key minerals which is very tightly regulated along with other minerals too by the body, especially the serum level potassiums. So what happens is, whenever you are supplemented with any of the potassium supplements or other multi-mineral supplements, what basically happens is your body first and foremost senses the levels of the mineral in the blood, and if the minerals are sufficient enough, it will just not absorb at all. It will be clearly eliminated through your urine. So you will not get all those benefits of those minerals if supplemented with any of the synthetic supplements. So the real trouble here is to get those minerals into your cells where it has dislodged itself due to higher levels of glucose. So what basically happens is, like your insulin has to signal the sodium potassium ATPase pump to work properly and push the potassium into the cells, and it also needs magnesium so that these ATPase pumps function properly. And for both of them to function properly, your blood sugar levels has to be stable. Like it should not fluctuate, because once it fluctuates, the insulin will not signal the sodium potassium ATPase pump. So all these factors are interlinked, because of which you may not get the desired results in terms of supplementation of any of the minerals. So let me just walk you through and side by side compare with my suggestions in my previous video about the reversal, the four levels of reversal, and what are the findings of clinical research and all the data which are available on the internet. So let's begin with the first point, which is increasing your stomach acid levels through supplementation of natural apple cider vinegar, or maybe by taking the supplemental hydrochloride, that is betaine hydrochloride, or any other supplementary acid building supplements. So this is a key ingredient, because once your stomach acids get replenished, or it starts making your gut environment acidic, it addresses two major problems associated with diabetes. The number one is the gut dysbiosis, because acid environment always eliminates all of those unwanted bacterial overgrowth. And number two is a proper breakdown of your diet, which in turn breaks down all those minerals and protein properly, and gives you a chance for assimilating those key minerals for the production of insulin and for the management and maintenance of your overall repair and your health. So this is one of the most important aspect, and why I kept it as the first, and to be followed to at least for 2 to 3 months before you add on the bacterial or the overgrowth elimination phase, is because your body needs the tools and the capabilities to fight with those overloaded pathogenic fungus or the candida. So first, if you take you acidify your stomach, you make your body capable enough by providing and supplementing it with proper nutrition to fight the second stage, and that is to fight the overload of the bacteria. Then if you find that the supplementation of potassium, so once you give a proper acidification of the stomach, you will find that there is hardly any need of any synthetic supplementation of any of the minerals or vitamins, because your body will start breaking your natural food down properly, making it more available for your body to utilize. Now let's discuss the third aspect of my reversal technique, that is populating your gut with good microflora, or a diverse microflora, through consumption of fermented foods. And this clearly is in line with the clinical literature, which talks about overpopulation of candida. So we are addressing in our second step by eliminating candida. And once you start eliminating candida, there is a vacuum of space where other unwanted bacteria may populate. So to overcome that issue, we start supplementing with natural probiotic food, which can populate on those places where the candida used to exist, and that leads to a balanced gut. And these balanced gut allows better breakdown and assimilation of your your diet. And now let's see the last aspect, the fourth aspect of my treatment reversal tip, and that involves including mild exercises or movement of muscles. And this has a direct correlation with the clinical trial, which talks about the major role of potassium in your muscles. So what I'm trying to address through doing muscle movement is, there are two methods of putting potassium back into your muscles. The method number one is to control your blood sugars through medication, which leads to a balancing of insulin, which leads to insulin signaling sodium potassium ATPase pump, and thereby pushing the potassium into the cells. That is method number one, through medication. The easy method is the method number two, where you start moving your muscles so that the muscles start consuming the glucose, which regulates your blood glucose levels, regulating your insulin, leading to insulin signaling, and leading to the potassium getting into your cells. So this is the easiest method of potassium supplement. So in fact, I would suggest you guys to try this out. Like, you do very mild exercises, especially on your major muscles like thigh, your calf, your biceps, your triceps, and your sides, lats. Like, do a very simple muscle movement exercises. Do it repetitively for maybe 10 to 15 minutes for all those muscles which I've just discussed. Just move them around, and after doing that, you go and have something which is very rich in minerals or potassium source, like coconut water, or maybe you can have some fruits or maybe banana, which has higher levels of potassium. Like anything which is rich in potassium, or you may even consider taking smaller doses of potassium supplement, maybe potassium citrate or potassium chloride, and you will find that your muscles will start feeling very relaxed, or maybe you will feel more hydrated. And that is the key here. Like, you work your muscles sufficiently so that it consumes the glucose, excess glucose which is available, leading to a better pushing of potassium into your cells rather than pushing it out of your cells. So now let's summarize whatever we have seen earlier, and find this loop. So this starts with the candidial overgrowth. Reduced stomach acids is the starting point, which leads to candidial overgrowth, and this leads to sugar cravings and spikes, which in turn leads to increased levels of sugar, insulins in your blood. And the fluctuations of sugar is directly proportional to the fluctuations of the insulin, which leads to shifts of potassium out of the cells. And because of the cellular potassium depletion, you have multiple symptoms like cramps, pain in the the pins and needles in your foot, and this leads to a weaker glucose control, and this leads to an uncontrolled diabetes. So this completes the whole loop, and that is the exact reason you will find excellent results by just following these simple 4-step reversal technique, which I have got excellent results with. Guys, in my next video, I'll be talking about the important correlation between and the importance of your lymphatic system, your chakras, and also your life energy jnana. Actually, all these three are interlinked and play a very, very important role in keeping you healthy and keeping you disease free, and that too without having any kinds of medication or doing any kind of drastic changes in your lifestyle. So stay tuned for our next video. So if you like this video, or maybe you learned something new out of this, I would highly recommend you to hit that like button. First and foremost, subscribe to our channel Value Infinity. Also share it with your family and friends. Also put your comments below if you want any help from my side, any suggestions, any guidance, or maybe you want to suggest me something on my next video topic, or maybe anything which you feel is important enough to be discussed. Do put it in your in the comment section, so that we can take up that, and we can form a community in which we learn from each other, from each other's mistakes, and try to live a very natural and healthy life. Thanks for watching, guys.